My name is R.D. Jones, and I'm the Executive Director of Clearly College Park, the development authority for the City of College Park. And I'd like to welcome Bill St. Aubin, who is the CEO, and he's an architect with the Sizemore Group. Welcome, Bill.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, Bill, first and foremost, could you please explain to everyone who is the Sizemore Group, what do you guys do, and how you some of your responsibilities?
Okay, so the Sizemore Group has been around about 45 years. I was 4 years old when I started it. I'm a second-generation owner of the company.
Okay.
This is founded by Mike Sizemore, and we're an architectural firm, but I would say 40 to 50% of our work is in planning, town and campus planning. We like to do things that are sustainable and good for the community. And we learned sometime in the late 80s, early 90s, that meant walkable communities and places where people would get out of their car and just creating great places that people wanted to be at. And so that's been a big part of our background, and probably some of the more major projects we worked on is when the Olympics came to Atlanta in '96. They hired our firm to master plan all the venues for it, and then we master planned Centennial Park, and probably more close to College Park this century, I guess. We've been working a lot on town planning and working with major job centers and how to make them more livable.
Okay, cool. Well, tell me this. Tell me a little bit about your background prior to the Sizemore Group. Where did you matriculate, family, anything that you might want to put in, to help our viewers understand who is Bill St. Aubin?
Well, I actually grew up in Chicago and came down here in the early 80s to go to Georgia Tech. But as a kid in Chicago, I loved riding my bike everywhere and getting around. And, we had sidewalks everywhere. We had places we could just ride to. And it was kind of a good way to grow up. And when I first moved down here, there wasn't sidewalks. There was a lot of pickup trucks that wanted to run you off the road. And there was a lot of hills. And so I stayed off my bike for a couple of decades. But I did go down in the early 80s and saw the seaside development, and that really kind of sparked my interest. So as soon as I saw that, I said, well, this is a way we could fix our suburban pattern to make a more walkable, livable environments. And so I really began an interest in there. Though when I got out of school, I went to work for a good local firm, Rosser International, but I did a lot of large-scale institutional projects. But in the back of my mind, I was always interested in creating walkable villages. And so when the firm I'm with now in the early 90s began to master plan downtown Smyrna, and they were also calling on me to join the firm, and they had just master planned Centennial Park, I said, yeah, it's time to make a change in my career. And I joined them, and I've been able to follow my passion ever since, so it's been great.
Okay. Well, can you talk to me about some notable projects that you have worked on that our viewers might be able to kind of reflect on some of your firm's work?
Yeah, so the notable projects that I personally worked on was downtown Duluth, master plan that created a town green out of a parking lot, and it's become a really good hub for that part of Gwinnett County. Also, early in my career, before I even joined them, I renovated the Fox Theater for about 10 years on and off. So I have a real passion for older buildings and renovations. And when I first got out of school, my very first project was a gentleman named Michael Lomax, being a young design architect for the Fulton County Government Center. And I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. But when I got out in the public and said I was working on a small project at Fox Theater, they were much more excited about that than the large scale government complex I did. So I had to learn as I got away from tech what people really like. And they like that sense of place and that authenticity. And so I've kind of followed that passion most of my career and that's what I kind of like. If we're going to talk later about College Park, but I like working in existing towns where Seaside, if you're familiar with that, was kind of a brand new town. When you interject into an existing town, you have a lot more history, a lot more character, and a lot more place, a lot more emotions too about how it gets done. When you work in an existing town as opposed to working for a single developer that can make all their decisions, and I've done both. But I do enjoy the placemaking where a place has been around for a while.
Okay, so would you say that the Sizemore Group, that most of your work is geared towards, most of your clients are public sector or private sector?
We have a nice blend, and I do that intentionally because I want to understand. I want my team, and I also want to understand both sides of the equation, because the public interest is also long term. And what I've evolved over the years in doing a bunch of probably over 50 or 60 town plans is the ones that are most successful overlap what the market's looking for, what the community's looking for, and what the funding sources are. Because you can have, if you just have one of those things, it could fall down. Like if the market really wants it, but the community doesn't, then it's going to be a hard road. But if the community wants it, but there's really no market basis or funding for it, that's a hard road too. So we do these studies. We look at a lot of different things, do a lot of different analytics to find, where that overlap is.
Okay. And you mentioned that, I guess, you have not left Atlanta since you were a student at Georgia Tech. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And you just worked like all over the country, though?
I have, yeah. I was fortunate about 4 years ago to go do a talk at Harvard on retrofitting malls and the experiential economy. And the class was an executive class, and it was full of a bunch of potential clients. And since then, I've been working all over the place. We're doing some work for a dead or dying mall in Chicago. We got a dead strip center in a cool town in Ohio we're working on. I just spent, I'm going up in a couple of weeks to master plan Pigeon Forge, Dollywood area. Oh. They're lacking a town center, so we've been kind of blessed. And my partner, Lily, who heads up our higher education, very much the same in terms of her working for campuses around the Southeast.
Okay. All right. Well, with you being here in Atlanta for a while, I'm quite sure that you're, familiar with, I guess, where the airport has been and what it has become and what they are working towards right now. So given your knowledge of the history of the airport, what opportunities do you see around the airport for development and redevelopment?
I think our airport is unique, and our surrounding communities is unique in the globe. So I think it's a weird combination of a great global destination with a lot of local character.
Okay.
I mean, how many airports? And I grew up in Chicago near O'Hare, which is a pretty big airport, but it doesn't have these cool little villages around it like you have, and you have Hapeville and College Park and East Point. And so you have some areas that really immediately can get you into a character area from a plane trip away, right? And I also think it's a too often overlooked area, and I think that's the next move for Atlanta. I really do. And I was having a good conversation with somebody at the ARC that helped formulate a lot of this, Dan Reuter. Yesterday we went to lunch. And the whole idea of Aerotropolis and the growth in Atlanta, we continue to seem to grow northern and north and north, further out north, but the opportunity and the proximity to downtown, the proximity to the airport, the proximity to now the Beltline, is all much better right here. Right. And the proximity to there's some nice rural areas in South Fulton, and down towards Peachtree City and Henry. So there's just a great place to live in terms of work and live. There's just a lot going on this side that I think has been overlooked, and I think it's time. But that may be a good thing, because part of my career is going back and looking at Cumberland and master planning that area, master planning perimeter, because they developed on a commercial model of the 80s, and they didn't have enough residents in the area, so you had a huge imbalance of jobs to housing. Right. They were developed around the car. They were car-centric environments, And so they're not very walkable, or they weren't. They're working very hard to get there. So I don't want to look at what the Braves have done at the Battery or what they're doing around Perimeter Center now. They're fixing all that, and that was part of our planning as well. But you have an opportunity here with the biggest job center south of I-20, probably the biggest job center in the region, or one of them, to do it right, because it's been overlooked. So it's time, and some of that overlook wasn't necessarily market driven. It had to do with land holdings, and that's been a lot of that's been cleared up. And so you can do something that they didn't do right. You could do right. You can get that walkability right from the beginning.
Right.
And one of the projects we worked down here that I was really excited about was the Aerotropolis Greenway and Trail Plan. And I wanted to do better than the Beltline. So I said, there's Silver Comet. I rode that my whole life. There's a Beltline. It's the darling of the world right now, but we have to do better for Aerotropolis. So we did 365 miles of trails. We changed it. The plan changes the whole area culturally. It's more like Copenhagen, and as they implement these trails, it'll be another way to get around to all these cool little villages, or to hop on a plane and go to Paris.
Right. Yeah, well, that was one question that I had. Even when I interviewed for the job, I said, this is the busiest airport in the world, yet there's so much undeveloped and underdeveloped property. Why has it, it's almost like a secret, and it just, I'm all about convenience. I'm from the country, Southeast Georgia, where everything's very flat. You don't have traffic jams, and I'm all about convenience. I like to do a job the easy way. Here in Atlanta, it seems as though that people, it seems like they kind of envy pain because they want to drive through the traffic, and it's just grueling at times when they can develop around the airport and they can be, right where they need to be and get there in a relatively short period of time. So you've partially answered the question, but why has it been overlooked for so long?
I think it's been overlooked for a couple of reasons. One is the getting the amount of, because it was 3 historic towns and more so actually in the area. Mm-hmm. Getting control of enough land to do something. And I think that you can probably have that just a little bit further away than immediately from the airport. But having those kind of parcels, when you go back to when Perimeter was developed, somebody bought a farm. They did have to buy out a subdivision actually in the Dunwoody area. But I think even more in some of these cities, they're very proud of what they have, and they saw the potential. And I give all the local mayors and elected officials credit for that. And they wouldn't just accept anything. So in a lot of cases, and when I first, I was educated in that back in 2008, I think, or somewhere around there. I did a master plan for downtown College Park, and I was struggling with what do you put around the airport, and the word port stuck in my mind. And so a port, it's a port. That's where everybody's coming in. You may need some industrial warehouse space. It was my just not as a walkable community maker, just trying to figure out what makes sense in the area. And the mayor, who's still the mayor now of College Park, said he wanted something better.
Right.
And I've heard that from other leaders in the area. They didn't want something that didn't bring a lot of real estate value. It might have brought convenience for some of the industrial operations. Didn't bring high salary jobs. And so they waited. They waited out from what the market, that's again, like what does the market want, what the community wants. I think for a long time the market down here has been trying to build. And some great industrial space, I'm not criticizing industrial space, has been done around here, but right up close to the airport, these cities kind of prize their holdings. In counties, Clayton has the same kind of conversation going on, that they wanted something with higher paying jobs. They just wanted, and some of that industrial is going to come in and some of it's going to be maker space. But I've seen the leadership in this area stick to doing something right. And I thought that's a good thing. That sometimes is a slower development. Mm-hmm. It's not the easiest thing, but it's better in the long run.
As I started to work with the city of College Park 5.5 years ago, there was this huge corporate entity that wanted to come into the city of College Park, and they wanted to build 2.5 million square feet of industrial warehouse space right at the very site where the airport city is being planned. So I'm from Southeast Georgia. I'm an economic development person. I said, whoa, this is a big project. I was all on it. I was real proud. And, I had the site plan laid out with these huge buildings and everything. And I laid it out right beside the golf course. And, man, I got my head taken off during that council meeting.
I can relate. I had a similar experience.
Yeah. But, at that point, did I finally recognize, that higher and best use and placemaking and looking at the fabric of the community that was there and not wanting to put anything within the city of College Park in certain areas that would adversely affect the current condition of the city. So from that point and moving the questions more so towards the city of College Park and the Sizemore Group, a recent project that you were that the Sizemore Group was hired to complete for us, is the master plan of the Airport City property, which is approximately 420 acres, including the golf course, of a mixed-use development. Tell me about the Airport City Master Plan, and what do you think are the opportunities that's available within that development area?
Well, this is one of those unique projects where I think the timing has come together with the land ownership and political will to do something better, and the market's aligning with a lot of those things. So all those three circles overlapped quicker on this project, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity. The markets over the course of my career has changed, where I used to try and create walkable communities. Sometimes thought I was nuts when I was trying to get people out of their cars or do parking on the street. But what was nuts in the 90s is mainstream now, and so people want to be by these older towns. Mm-hmm. And you have some nice urban fabric in this area, and you have an old downtown, and you have a MARTA station, and that's big. And this would be before you even talk about the airport. The MARTA station, with today's traffic, it's where a lot of the office space is going around the region. If you look at the growth around the region and where you're seeing more vertical construction, it's around our transit stations, because people just don't want to be stuck in their cars anymore, and so that gives them an alternative. So you have that going for you, and then the overall infrastructure. I mean, this site is a good investment, regardless of what the economy does in the future, because you've got the MARTA station, you got a historic downtown, and then you have the world's busiest airport, and then you have the International Convention Center with now the Hawks B-League. Is that the right way to call it? G-League. Yes.
Skyhawks.
Yeah, right across the street. So there's just so much institutional investment, and that's what I've also learned around over my course of my career is institutional investment attracts top quality developers and developments, because it's in longer term views, because it's a safe investment for the long run. So it has all that going for it. It has a golf course going for it, and then we did and it has the political will, which is always important. That's like the first thing, especially if in this case they own the land. But even when they don't own the land, you got to get it zoned. So it has all that. So then we did our market analysis, and there was a lot of demand. I mean, a lot of demand for things that people were really excited about seeing here. There's a demand for a premium outlet center that could be a grade above what you see in the premium outlet centers around the region, but you have to drive a long way to get to a premium outlet center if you live in Midtown, or if you live anywhere in the area. You got to drive 30, 40 minutes out, and there's models like that around the world that are close to airports, and so that in terms of regional need plus an airport stop at something like that would really be good. And we saw a lot of space right away, some over 400,000 square feet of space that could be built. Now because the demand was for a walkable community, I always like a challenge. So if you think of a premium outlet center, they're not necessarily walkable Main Street. So we've come up with a walkable Main Street premium outlet center with a lineal park down the middle. And so it's a pretty cool environment to buy some pretty cool stuff at a pretty cool price,
Right.
So we're excited about that, and we think that can happen pretty soon. And then you have a huge jobs to housing balance, and you have some challenge with the airport noise contours. With not all the site is in those higher decibel areas, and so right away and it looks like it's going to happen, is some residential. When I talk about jobs to housing balance, that's how you solve the transportation problem in a region, or one of the many things you need to do. And I think there's something like 55,000 jobs in the area, and a fraction of that living in the area. So, and when I say a fraction, like 10,000 or something. So if people that are having to commute into the airport right now had a chance to live close by. The other great investment that when you're talking about College Park, you can't forget is Woodward Academy.
Yes.
I mean, it's a great school, and that's attracted people to live in this area just to cut down their daily commute with their kids, that are going to that incredible school. So the other space that I thought originally, and I was involved in, I was honored. Somehow I ended up getting a tour of the Amazon campus.
Yes.
For a project here in Atlanta. I didn't realize at the time that client of mine, a rather large client on the Beltline, I won't say, they were one of the sites as well. But when I went to Amazon, what I learned is they really like being in an urban and street grid environment with one owner, because they can grow or shrink as they need to. They want to be part of the community. They want to be part of a fabric. They weren't looking for, like what Apple did, an isolated campus. They were looking to be part of a city. And where they ended up going, they're directly attached to an airport. I mean, the only thing that they had to do at Crystal City was build a bridge, so you can practically walk from the terminal to the Amazon campus now.
Wow.
And so I kept that in my mind as this College Park and other sites around the airport. I said, there's other Amazons out there, so this is a site that really could be a great site for the corporate campus. It's hard for our market guys to predict that, but they did on just their basis. Well, forget that, which would be, I think we ought to design this site so we can accommodate something of that scale, and we did. But there was 420,000 square feet of demand for office without that even happening.
Wow.
So there's a lot of need for office in the area. So we have that in the plan as well. You're short about, even with all the hotels under construction, you're short about 1,000 beds. I think 650 we thought could be allocated to this site. So you got a lot of hotels. But when you look at what the community wanted, that's the market. So those are the market forces. The community wanted some local restaurants. They wanted some places for the family to hang out, and they wanted to keep that golf course. And so what happens is, because some of the airport area, the population has been removed because of the flight path, and we're replacing some of that with this new development. But you need population to support or traffic to support those restaurants they want. So it ended up being kind of a perfect marriage, even though there wasn't a big demand for the restaurants they wanted. By the time you built this other stuff, there will be. So that's a combination of the locals being involved in attending the local restaurants, and hopefully even owning some of them and running some of them, and then having this attraction, somebody shopping next door or working next door, or somebody flying in the shop or flying into an office, those things will begin to support the amount of restaurants and make a good kind of foodie place out of. And we push that towards downtown College Park to be in the character area. And so I think that's going to happen. It's going to happen kind of as the population comes here for other reasons.
Okay. Oh, cool. Well, recently we had the unveiling of the draft master plan that was presented to Mayor and Council a couple of weeks ago. We're working now on having it formally adopted in July. And with that being said, the next phase moving forward, those next steps include, having a DRI completed, zoning. I guess the great thing about this particular project is, it falls within the tax allocation district. 75% of the property is within the new federal opportunity zone. This area is also in a state opportunity zone. You have the Clearly College Park. The Development Authority has the ability to be able to, participate and provide incentives, throughout this development site. You have one owner of the property that also controls the zoning. So it's kind of that perfect storm of, a project. You have a lot of infrastructure that's around it. You have just south of it, the Georgia National Convention Center, as you mentioned. You have the arena for the Hawks that's under construction. You have a nice historic district behind it with, a traditional street grid. The MARTA station, is, it's, a rock's throw, from Main Street. So what do you feel will be a game changer for this particular project? And also, what do you feel is also kind of the Achilles heel to this project, also not getting off the ground, not moving forward?
The game. I mean, everything you just said adds up to a really nice bundle. Then plus the market demand I talked about that says go, right.
Yeah.
And so it's a site that I think will. My biggest fear is it goes too fast and we don't have the quality. And so I think getting some design guides in place, because the one thing I learned about mixed use development is, and we'll have multiple, more likely multiple developers doing different components of this. They typically want total freedom to do whatever they want on their site, but they want everybody else to do exactly to follow the rules, so they know what's coming, right? So, so making sure everybody plays by the same set of rules and deliver the quality that the community is looking for, I think, is important. So it's a first step. And then in the shovel, when I'm from the big investors, the money's there now and it wants to move quick. So having something shovel ready is important to them. They want to know the cities behind it. They want to know they got the zoning. They want to know the land's under control. And so the more we can do to clear all those hurdles, and a lot of them been cleared by College Park already, but the DRI, like you said, was important. And that every time you clear one of those hurdles, it adds value to the bigger players. And so I think that's a to me, the game changer has been also that you have assembled the land and you got control of the majority of it. And so there's having that single owner. And to speak frankly, probably the challenge is you have an owner that's not a sophisticated developer, right? You have an owner that's a city, right? Just to be honest. And so, how you don't want them to slow down the process, and you don't want to get mired in politics. So that would be, in just a frank conversation, one of the challenges. And they've wisely put this under the arm of BIDA, which is that's their business. And I would say you don't want it to have to go back for a bunch of approvals that would be open to political discussions. You want this thing to be able to move at a high quality, at a good pace, but not too fast.
Right.
And so making sure that the municipality understands that they need to let the professionals do what they do and get this thing done. That's probably a challenge that we're all facing coming up in this next step.
Right.
And I don't know how much of that you want to put in the final.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for our viewers, you and I understand certain terms, and I didn't think about this, but, DRI, Development of Regional Impact, explain what that is exactly for our viewers.
Development of regional impact. Any project that was like 500,000 square feet or 500 units, there's a couple different rules the ARC had put in place. But they wanted to see how it was going to impact the region. And so in order to get those projects approved that are big enough to have an impact on our transportation infrastructure as a region, how we perform as a region, you have to go through a DRI process. And the first step, which is advantage in this case, is get the local municipality behind it. Well, this is their plan. So I think we're going to go pretty quickly into the DRI process. Plus, what I told you about jobs to housing balance, a lot of the things we're doing here will actually help with transportation. But it's a process that's required before you can rezone a project of this magnitude anywhere in the region. And so, it's a challenge for developers to take projects through it. So having the city take the lead on that with our team's expertise, I think is going to make it go pretty quick. Okay. And it needs to.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, what is in your professional perspective, a reasonable timeline for the initial the first phases of the project? We talked about that, there was a residential component that was a part of the first phase, about 57 acres, and then that there was a considerable amount of retail and probably some hotel space that was in the first phase. About how long would it take to complete that project, and then how long would it take to kind of build the entire project out, given if the development cycle does not, plummet?
Yeah, I mean, design and construction and entitlements are a slower process than a lot of other businesses. And so managing expectations on the speed of this is probably a good idea. My gut is I think this phase one can get done in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's the stuff we showed in the market, which is beyond just, it's the office, the retail, and the residential. And the hotels, there's demand for all that. We even have something similar to a Topgolf that could come in, and all that could happen within the next 5 to 10 years. You got to get the infrastructure in place first. So we've got some streets to build, and infrastructure doesn't move as fast as you want it getting it in place. Luckily, you have a street grid here, and we tried to follow it in the plan, so we haven't tried to reinvent a lot of streets, but we have tried to upgrade them, and they have been abandoned for a long time, so they would need maintenance issues at a minimum. We're going to go beyond that and make them really complete streets, walkable streets. The other thing that holds up a lot of projects in redevelopment, and we're trying to get ahead of this curve, is what do you do with the stormwater and how you treat the stormwater. And we have, just like Pond City Market downtown wanted to happen without the Fourth Ward Park, because that's handled their stormwater issue. We've pre-planned where the stormwater should go and turn it into actual assets for the community and park space. Even have a cultural museum next to one of the parks, so we're making some kind of public placemaking. All that stuff will help catalyze development for it, and but they do take time. Those take some time. So getting the infrastructure in will take some time, even if everybody was ready to go. And every time though you make one of those investments, it just adds value to the developer who's trying to get the project done.
Right. So tell me this, just kind of ballparking it. I know that we were at the point where the master plan was just completed. How much do you think has to go into the public infrastructure, and then how much do you think this overall development could be at build out?
When you say much, are you talking dollars?
Dollars.
There's some rules of thumb, and it'll be an interesting balance act going forward, and over the next couple of weeks we'll be looking carefully at that. But if I just said order of magnitude, without spending a lot of time on it, I think you have about $500 million worth of vertical investment, and usually it's just a kind of a rule of thumb. The development of community, there's a range within this, probably 2 to 5% either way. but 10% of that could be the land value and 10% of that could be the infrastructure. So you have, and if you put the infrastructure in, then the land value is the two together, right? So,
right.
So you have, you could have as much as $50 million in infrastructure development. If for the whole build out, you could do that in phases, but you can't get the development to happen until that happens. So it'll limit how much gets done, how much you do up front, and then. But it wouldn't surprise me that it's going to end up close to that area. We have some more good guesses on different scales. Probably we'd love to get the main and main done. We have a street that's going north-south and a street that's going east-west that creates kind of a real place-making new main street that connects it all together and connects the residents and connects to the golf course. And that phase was in the kind of 20 million, to get just that piece, that bones, the main bones, but you still got the lungs. It's like the spine, right? You still got the rib cage and all the other stuff to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in closing, how can viewers get in contact with you if they want to know more about the Airport City Master Plan and possible end users to get more details, technical details that we really don't have the time to kind of discuss right now?
Yeah, I have a pretty open policy. I keep my cell phone relatively open, but I'd probably have you call the office. 404-605-0690 is our office number. And I do have a project manager on this project, Deanna Murphy. She just had a baby. so I'm probably the best person to call right now. We do have a whole team working on it, to be honest with you. And then we even have a local business that's going to be involved in the public communication. And then we're partnering with a great firm that does engineering and program management, CERM. So we're going to have a whole team moving forward, and I think that'll shake out how the communication should happen. But I'm pretty open to, on the land side, Ackerman with Steve is probably the best one to call, because he calls me now, I think weekly or daily, about the interest he's getting, and can we tweak this and can we tweak that? And it's not like any plan. What I like to tell people is, it's a really good framework, but I think the city and we are willing to work with the right developer if we have to tweak it, to make the overall framework. We know what the goals are, but it's not so rigid that you couldn't make something really good happen.
Okay,
right.
All right. Well, Bill, I'd like to thank you for coming to having a conversation with me this morning with Clearly College Park to discuss development around the airport, your planning, master planning, all over the region, all over the country. I appreciate you taking time to visit with us. And do you have any final words for our viewers?
No, we really feel blessed to be involved in this project and to, have grown the talent we have in our office to be asked to do something like this. And this is a great project for the region. But when you think about Atlanta and its role in the southeastern United States and our airport and its role domestically throughout the country, this is a very important site, and it's an honor to be involved, and we look forward to making sure it gets done right for everybody involved.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill.
All right.
And I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in today with Clearly College Park. And I will look forward to talking to you very, very soon with another episode. And remember, Clearly College Park is where you will land in plain sight.